Today I'm going to be reviewing the 2018 horror movie Hereditary, and I wanted to start off by saying that this review will contain spoilers of the movie. So if you haven't watched it yet, I might recommend watching the movie before listening to this video. I've always been a big fan of the horror genre, and some of my favorite movies are from the 70s and 80s, and I say this because Hereditary does kind of give a feel of a classic horror movie. It's a bit of a slow burn with a steadily escalating series of events leading to a pretty intense conclusion. So if you're looking for a fast, intense, constantly moving horror movie, this may not be for you. But if you enjoy a good slow burn horror movie, this is a great one for you and you'll enjoy it very much. So this movie is the story of a grieving family. At the beginning, the grandmother has passed away and the entire family is dealing with it in different ways. The mother from the beginning is very clear as a not very stable person. She's dealing with a lot of grief throughout her entire life, and it's affected her in various ways, and losing her mother has made it much more difficult. She seems to be an artist. She makes various scenes in the forms of dioramas, and it appears many of them depict events that occurred between her and her mother towards the end of her life, even depicting her in a hospice situation or in the hospital. The oldest son seems a little indifferent to the rest of the family and seems to deal with his problems. He seems to be a little bit of a stoner, so that's probably how he deals with his grief with his family, and he seems a bit not to get along with the mother the best. And we see later in the movie that there's great reason for this, because apparently she was a sleepwalker and even may have tried to kill him at one point when he was younger. Her younger daughter seems very affected by the loss of the grandmother. She's very upset. She's sleeping up in a treehouse at night and just seems a little bit odd altogether. She's quiet, doesn't talk much, kind of sits and draws in her sketchbook. And lastly, there's the father. The father is the one I feel the worst for in this movie. He seems like the most normal person, and he's really just seems like a father who's trying to hold his family together and support them to the best of his ability. After the death of the grandmother, the odd events begin pretty much immediately, and at first it seems to focus mostly on the mother and the daughter. The mother seems to start seeing things. She starts to think she sees apparitions in the house, and the daughter starts seeing things as well. A bird crashes into her window at school, and she finds the dead body and cuts the head off. Decapitation is a common theme in this movie, as we'll see as it goes forward. She also sees a woman standing outside the fence at her school, and later a woman in the woods outside of their house. And watching this, I wasn't sure, is this supposed to be the grandmother? And later we see that this is more likely members of the weird cult that the grandmother is a part of. This is one of those movies that has a frustrating theme where some of the tragedy probably could have been avoided if the mother had researched a little more into her mother's past, and she started to. She saw a letter from her mother after she had died, and she had boxes of her stuff that later reveal the cult that the grandmother was a part of, and she could have found out so much more had she done it, but she was in a period of grief, so it's understandable that she didn't really want to dive into that at the time. It just gets frustrating for the audience to see this. So as the movie progresses, the family's grief is multiplied because the mother insists that the son take the daughter with him to a party that she thinks is a school function. He does, and at the party she eats some cake which has peanuts in, which she's allergic to, causing a reaction. He tries to rush her to the hospital, but in the process driving there, the daughter, being unable to breathe well because her throat is closing up, tries to stick her head out the window to get some air and is decapitated when he swerves in the road and gets too close to a telephone pole. So this is the second decapitation of the film. The brother, just being in a state of pure shock at this point, not knowing what to do, he just drives home, parks the car, goes in, and goes to bed, and the parents find the body of their daughter in the morning, still in the car. This continues their grief, and of course it multiplies now, and the father is trying harder than ever to keep the family together and keep them calm, and keep things on as normal of a trajectory as possible in this situation. The mother is worse off than ever, and she's even depicts the scene of her daughter's decapitation in one of her dioramas that she's making, much to the father's disturbance when he finds out about this. There's also immediately more tension between the mother and son, which is understandable considering the son was involved in the daughter's death. It was an accident. It can't be entirely his fault, but you know that's going to cause a tension between him and the parents. The father, although, tries to continue to protect the son and keep him taken care of and try to protect him from what the mother's doing. At this point is where some of the supernatural occurrences start to turn more towards the son, in addition to still the mother. The mother in the movie has sought out a group where she can talk to other people grieving from loss, and there's a woman there who reaches out to the mother and tries to become closer. She thinks this is just another concerned person going through grief, and really, no, this is one of her own mother's friends who is part of the same cult and is trying to slowly manipulate the family towards their overall goal. She tries to trick the mother and get her to come over to her house to see that she found a way to communicate with the people that she lost and tell her that there's a way that she can do this too. She gives her a candle and an incantation to read and tells her she needs to have an object that the spirit can attach itself to. The psychological theme in the movie intensifies, and the movie gets to a point where there's a period where you're not sure what's going on is real or imagined by the mother, or a dream of hers, or a dream of the son's in many cases. The son does start to experience supernatural phenomenon as well, seeing apparitions of his own, as well as just weird occurrences even when he's at school. The mother does perform the spell that the lady tricks her into doing, but it does not give the desired result. In fact, it becomes clear that something is immediately after their son. She attaches the spirit to the daughter's sketchbook, and she tries to destroy it by throwing it in the fireplace, but she sees when she does this, it almost kills her as well, because her sleeve catches on fire when the book does and doesn't go out until she puts the fire on the book out as well. This all continues to build with various occurrences happening to both the mother and the son. The father's getting more frustrated because he's worried about his son, and I think he believes that his wife is losing her grips on reality. And when he finds out that the grandmother's grave had been disturbed, he even believes that the wife may have done this herself. The wife does find a body in their attic with a weird symbol painted above it and believes that this is the body of the grandmother, who it turns out to be, although it is decapitated, so the third decapitation of the movie. The mother decides that she needs to protect her son and must destroy the book, even if it means at the cost of her own life. She tries to talk the father into helping her with this, but he won't because he's very upset. So she finally just takes the book, throws it in the fireplace, but it's instead the father who bursts into flames and is killed by this. And this also seems to trigger the end for the mother, as she seems to be taken in control by whatever dark magic is at work in their household. The son awakes later in the house and finds his father dead in the living room, and is then chased by his mother until he retreats all the way up into the attic. She is fully out of control of her own body at this point, and he's scared, not sure what to do. He's hiding in the attic. The body of the grandmother is gone at this point, but he is scared in the attic. He looks up, he hears a noise, and sees his mother disturbingly sawing her own head off. So for the fourth and final decapitation, she kills herself. He sees some other figures in the attic, and being scared, he runs and launches himself out the window and falls to his apparent death. And we then see an orb, which is to be the spirit of the younger sister, entering his body and then wakes up. We see various people standing in the shadows of the woods. Some of them are clothed, some of them are not. And we see the body of the mother levitate up into the treehouse. So the brother, or as we now find out, who is actually the sister Charlie in the brother's body, gets up and walks into the treehouse, where there is a group of several of the cult members, and they are all bowing down to her or him, however you look at it at this point, and announce that he is the new king of their cult. And so this is where the whole plot of the movie is revealed. Apparently the grandmother was part of this cult the entire time. Their plan is to raise their leader, which is a king of hell, they say, who will lead them to continue to be prosperous and above others in the world. They wanted the daughter to rise to this position, Charlie, but they needed a male, so the brother had a male body. So they first orchestrated everything. Their plan was for Charlie to die, to take the body of the brother, and then therefore could be crowned as their new king and cult leader. The dead bodies of both the mother and grandmother are there bowing with the other cult members, so there is supernatural forces on display. So this movie ends with a bit of an open-endedness. The mother, grandmother, father, son are all dead, but we're led to believe that the daughter is living on in the body of the son, although she has now been possessed as a supernatural cult leader. So the implications of what this could lead to next are left pretty open. As I said earlier on, this movie is quite a bit of a slow burn and gets really intense at the end. The ending scene is very fun to watch. If you're a fan of horror, it gets pretty intense and we see a lot of action. So it really depends on what you like in horror if you're going to like this movie. This movie is one where the bad guys seemingly win in the end. This happens a lot, but you never know. You're not going to get your happy ending if you thought the family was going to pull through at the end of this movie. Looking at how this movie was received on Rotten Tomatoes, the critics loved this movie. It got a 90% fresh score. The audiences were less enthusiastic, as it only got a 68% positive score from audiences. Looking at IMDb, the movie got a 7.3 out of 10. And for my personal score, I would fall in line with this I give it about a 7 out of 10. It's not one of my favorite horror movies, but it was fun and very enjoyable, and different from other horror movies I've seen recently. Something you don't always get in horror movies is that this movie had some tremendous acting, particularly the mother in this movie. She really kept you wondering at times if what was going on was supernatural or just something going on in her own head. And you do at times want the family to come through and succeed here, but it's clear that this is a well laid out plan that this grandmother and this cult has been planning for this family for multiple generations. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed my review of this movie Hereditary. It's well worth checking out if you're a fan of the horror genre. Please be sure to let me know your thoughts on the movie in the comments below, and please be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for listening.